In this video, I'm going to be making a movable miter station fence using Kreg's precision Trak system. So if you're interested, stick around.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So now that both rolling tool tables are complete, the next step is to take this fence and extend it onto this table and also extend it onto this table. There's a bunch of different operations that you can do on the radial arm saw. So for example, I can take this fence and move it to the back, and there's some spacers back here, so I can move the spacers in front of the fence, move the fence to the back, put the drop leaf up, and then I have a lot more support in table space to fully support a 4x8 sheet of plywood. And so then I could rip a 4x8 sheet of plywood across both tables. So if I move this fence to the back, the fence that I have on either side also has to follow this fence and be able to move to the rear as well. So on most miter saw stations, the fence is fixed, and so you don't have to worry about that. But in this case, I want it to be movable. So the plan is I'm going to put Trak in both of these tables, and so I can move the fence from front to back. So for the Trak, I ended up picking up two of these 17-piece universal Trak kits from Rockler, which comes with a bunch of knobs and stuff in it, and one 48-inch piece of Trak. And the nice thing about the Trak that these come with is that they already have these pre-drilled holes in them. I also picked up a 30-inch piece of standard Trak, which doesn't have any of the pre-drilled holes in them, which is fine. I can drill those on my own and recess the screws on my own. So between the 30-inch piece and the two 48-inch pieces, I should be able to have enough to do 4 30-inch rows across both tables. And the plan is to use Trak in combination with the Kreg precision track and stop system. It's going to look just like this, but with the addition of Trak so that I can move it around, and that'll be my next video.
Oops, that's not the next video, that's this video.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
So I just made a big mistake. I assumed incorrectly that the standard Trak that I bought was the same as the Trak that had the pre-drilled holes in them. And as you can see, it's not the same at all. The standard stuff, it sits higher than the other Trak. I don't know if you can see that, but it's quite a bit higher. And the profile is actually a little bit different. So it looks like I'm going to have to make another trip to Rockler and buy another piece of Trak.
Let's begin now.
The first step is to route 3/4-inch dados into the tables for the Trak. So I grabbed my homemade track saw straight edge and used that to run the router against. I placed a mark on each side of the table where I wanted the center of the dado. Then I took my router and centered the router bit over the line, and then marked the edge of the router so that I can align my straight edge with that edge. After getting the T-Trak installed in the tables, I used my homemade track saw to cut the boards for the fence. I'm using 3/4 inch MDF for the fence, and the vertical piece is 2 1/4 inches high, and the backboard is 3 inches wide. Next, I took the backboard and aligned it with the edges of the table so that I can mark the center of the T-Trak channels. I used a center punch to mark where I wanted the holes for the T-slot bolts, then I used my drill press to drill the holes. After getting the backboard fastened to the table, I used that in combination with the clamp so that I can secure the fence in place while pre-drilling the holes to mount the fence to the backboard. Then I used a countersink bit to countersink the holes for the screw heads. I lined the table with some wax paper to prevent any squeeze out from getting on the table. Then I glued and screwed the fence to the backboard. After letting it set for a few minutes, I pulled the wax paper and then wiped off any excess squeeze out. And then I secured it back to the table using the T-Trak knobs. While the glue was drying, I thought that'd be a good time to go back to Rockler and pick up that piece of T-Trak that I screwed up on earlier. I let the glue sit for a while, and then I came back to install the Kreg track on top of the fence. I used my straight edge to align the new fence to the radial arm saw fence, and it's really quick and easy, as well as perfectly flat with the radial arm saw fence. One of the reasons why I chose MDF is because it's inherently a flat material, and because I had a lot of it laying around the shop.
So the kit comes with two different types of stops. They call this one the production stop. There's two different lenses here on either side of the stop with nylon set screws so you can really fine tune and dial that in. Then they also include this stop, which is, they call this a swing stop. So you can push a board underneath. The stop swings out of the way when you don't want to use it. It swings back down, and then you can use it as a secondary stop if you need to. There's one lens on this stop with a red line through the middle, and another nylon set screw so you can fine tune that stop. The kit also comes with two sets of measuring tape, and each one is 12 feet long, so you have plenty of tape to apply on either side of the saw if you want. One counts from left to right, and the other one counts from right to left.
To position the tape on top of the fence, I took a board that was exactly 29 inches long. I pushed that up against the saw blade, and then I made a mark on the fence so that I knew exactly where to put the lens on the stop. To make the tape a little bit easier to install on top of the fence, I removed some of the backing just below the 29-inch mark on the tape. This just made it so that the tape wasn't sticking all over everything when I was trying to lay it across the fence. I took the tape and lined up the 29-inch mark on the tape to the mark that I had on the fence. And from there I just peeled off the backing and everything went on really smooth. I should also mention that the line on the lens has a 3/8 inch offset from the actual 29-inch mark, so I did have to adjust for that. After getting the tape installed, I grabbed that 29-inch board, put it up against the saw blade, and then I used the nylon set screw on the lens to fine-tune and adjust the lens with the 29-inch mark. I moved the stop over about a 1/2 inch and then made it a test cut just to check the accuracy of everything, and it was dead on. After getting the left side of the fence squared away, I moved on to the right side of the fence and went through the same exact procedure. After the fence was finished, I went ahead and applied a few coats of shellac to both the fence and the tables just to seal it up and protect it a little bit better. I did run into a minor issue with the knobs that I used on the backboards. They ended up running into the production stop, so I ended up swapping out those knobs with a different style knob that also came inside the universal T-Trak kit, and after I did that, everything was just fine.
Now, one thing that I really like about this setup is that I can easily take the production stop and simply unclamp it, pick it up, and move it to the other side of the saw. And because it has dual lenses, one lens is configured for the left side and the other lens is configured for the right side. So I can just as easily move it and make production cuts from the right side of the blade. That's not so much the case with the swing stop. The swing stop only has a lens on one side of the stop. So once you configure it for either the right side or the left side of the saw, it pretty much has to remain on that side of the saw. Otherwise, I mean, you could move it, but the lens won't line up to be accurate with the measurement on the tape measure. So you're probably wondering, well, how easy is it to move the fences and change the setup that I was talking about earlier with the radial arm saw? So I'm going to go ahead and set this up for ripping a sheet of plywood, just so you can see the transition and see how easy that is. So the first step is to simply remove the stops. So go ahead and remove that. Then I'll go ahead and swing my saw out, and my dust collection box isn't secured to anything, so I can just lift that out of the way. There's a couple clamps here on the back of the saw that secure, that push these spacer boards into the fence that secures the fence to the table. And there's two different size spacers I have back here. So, for example, I can go and move the smaller spacer forward, and I can move the fence back if I just needed a little bit more table space, and I could use it that way. I can also put both spacers in front, move my fence to the back, and go ahead and clamp that down. And with the fence moved all the way to the rear, I have 25 inches of space between the fence and, if I open up the drop leaf, to the front of the table. So now what I can do is unclamp my fence and move it to the back, and unclamp the other fence, move that to the back. I can simply take a straight edge and align both fences on either side of the main fence to the straight edge. That only takes a couple seconds to do. I'll go ahead and do the other one. And now that's secured down, now I can go and take my radial arm saw and put that in the rip position. And I'm not going to go into the safety details of putting the blade guard down and putting the anti-kickback fingers down. You should already know how to safely operate your radial arm saw. But just for demonstration purposes, I don't have a sheet of plywood here, but we'll go ahead and this is a sheet of polystyrene that I have. So, and then as you can see, I could take a full, this isn't a full 4x8 sheet, but you could rip a full 4x8 sheet because the saw blade does come out past 24 inches, so it would fully support a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Then you can go ahead and rip at any width you want. This right now is in the out rip position, but I can also go ahead and move it to they call the in-rip position and move the blade closer to the fence, so I could rip pretty much anything I want to. Very easy. The other nice thing about this setup is because I'm using Trak, I can use all of the standard clamps that also work with Trak. For example, I can use the fence in combination with the clamp to secure a board down for a cut, or if I need to work with the board, or if I need to clamp something down to the front of the table. You could also use these little guys so that you can always put your fence right back where you want it.
Damn.